Alright, so in today's video, we are going to be actually reacting to Reddit, which is, this is the first time we're going to be doing this, and I'm looking forward to it. This one's going to be looking at a lot of questions about tank on the Overwatch University Reddit, and there was actually some really good ones here. We're actually going to start off with one that you'll see. The first one here is, how do you deal with the toxicity that inherently comes with playing tank and ranked? And this is like I said, a good question to start the video. I think many would agree that tank is currently one of the most unfun roles to play. I still enjoy playing tank, but it's definitely become a lot more difficult. There are countless reasons for that, and I don't want to get into them here. But when I decide to mostly play tank now in Season 9, I was aware of these role-specific issues. One thing I wasn't prepared for is the endless amount of abuse and toxicity you would receive from your teammates for simply playing tank. If you make one avoidable mistake, your team is at your throat. I think one thing that has really changed, the expectations that your teammates have of you is still like early Overwatch tank. They want you to go up there, they want you to create all the space in the world, and they don't want you to feed. The problem is right now is that tanks take so much damage right away. And I'm not talking like you stand in the middle of the open. I'm saying you peek around the corner, you take like 80% of your HP, and you have to sit there and wait to get healed back up. So your teammates' expectations are, you want to play tank like you did in Overwatch 1 or like beginning of Overwatch 2 where tank was really strong. But right now, like tank can't create that same space consistently that a lot of players are looking for. So you kind of run into this issue where everybody thinks like, oh, you have to swap because of the other tank. You have to do this, you have to do that. But in reality, tank in general is just in a spot where there's a huge playstyle adjustment, but a lot of players aren't really getting used to the new playstyle adjustment yet. Both as a tank and not a tank. So a lot of the time the players are sitting here thinking you're feeding, you're not playing it correctly, that if you switch to this hero, it's going to go perfectly, etc. But most of the time, the truth with tank right now is that it's not going to happen that way. You might say just disable chat or don't use voice chat if you have any issue with toxicity, but that's the issue. I want to communicate with my team. And yeah, I mean, like a lot of the time you do want to communicate with your team. So obviously, there's going to be still good suggestions, etc. Especially if I play a dive tank such as Ball, Winston, or Doom. These tanks greatly benefit from communication with your team. Unfortunately, it just isn't worth the effort for me. I don't have the patience to deal with toxic teammates that will constantly blame anyone but themselves. I do play off-meta tanks a lot, such as Ball, Road, and even Rein, and I'm sure that makes the toxicity problem even worse. But I don't get that. If I manage to reach the same rank as you while playing these characters, I surely have the right to play them in my respected rank. Yeah, I think a lot of the time, and I see this a lot with tank, even when I'm playing tank, we see it sometimes in like TikTok comments, etc. They're like, switch tanks. Get off that tank. Why are you on this tank? And a lot of the, like, what happens right now is we've always heard about the counter swap aspect of Overwatch, but a lot of people want you to swap tanks based off of the other tank consistently, even though that tank may not be having the same value that they're expecting that other tank to have value against you. A good example of this is some players might be making D.Va work against a Zarya. And the Zarya isn't getting value against the D.Va, and the D.Va is getting a lot of value preventing a bunch of other stuff, but without the team being able to see that matchup or see what's going on, they're just telling you to swap right away. Swap. Get off that hero. Oh, they have a Zarya. You can't play the hero. When in reality, while counter swapping is a thing, that 1v1 tank matchup isn't quite the end-all be-all for tanking. And that's where it comes down to what I mentioned earlier about the expectations, where players expect tanks to be able to play this exact way that they kind of want the tanks to play. But tanking is so much different than it used to be in that type of sense, right? But more importantly, do you have advice on how to play tank and communicate with the team without getting easily frustrated by the toxicity? The only thing I will say with me when I play tank is I just tried my best to kind of look at what I can do to improve. And that's really the best I can do. Like sometimes I'll have like players be like, oh, push in, go push in. No, we gotta push in. And it's like, dude, I'm at 25% HP at all times. If I was capable of pushing in, and I'm a very aggressive tank player, I would push in. But I can't. I have to hide behind walls. I have to play it slower than I want to because of where Overwatch tanking currently is. When playing tank, what options do you have against Mauga? So I don't main tank. I play support, but I started playing tank and quick play, and it's made me want to play Jungle Queen and D.Va in ranked. The problem is I hate Mauga. I hate playing him. I hate playing against him. I hate playing against him as a support, and I also hate playing with him as a support. Any way you slice it, it's not fun whether you win or lose. So, if I did play tank and ranked, what are my options? A little side statement to that. I had a lot of people be like, why aren't you going D.Va against Mauga? And I'm like, I don't know where the whole D.Va is the absolute you must go against Mauga type of situation, because you just don't have the long enough cooldowns to be able to do what you like, to be able to prevent Mauga from getting that full value. It's very timing based, but I don't think of D.Va as a hard counter to Mauga. And it was always a surprise to me that it became a thing for a bit, because I have tried playing a lot of D.Va against Mauga, and it usually is more if the Mauga is playing incorrectly than it is if I'm able to get that full value. Because the moment, like, even when they don't have cardiac overdrive, if I can't get to them and they even remotely are looked at by their teammates, like, I'm not getting anything done. Sigma is also rather slow to play, but I'll do it. I also kind of hate Orisa for the same reasons as Mauga, but I suppose it has to be learned. Orisa's pretty good against Mauga. It's more of a trade-off. It also depends how your team's playing. A lot of players like to play behind shields. So sometimes a lot of players ask for Orisa, but then they don't play like they're playing with an Orisa. They play like they're playing with a Reinhardt, so you still lose that value sometimes. But Orisa's pretty good there. I'm going to be honest with you, and people might agree or disagree with me on this one. I don't look at Zarya as a counter to Mauga. And keep in mind, we actually did see an EU team successfully play Zarya during the OWCS against a Mauga during the OP Mauga. So it's not like it's impossible. It's just like, unless you're playing Zarya really efficiently and you have that backup from your teammates all the time, what's going to happen is they're just going to grind your bubbles down and they're going to roll you eventually. Doesn't mean I'm not against the idea, though. So against Mauga, if you're not going to go Mauga and you don't want to play Orisa, I would say my safest bet right now is Sigma. And that's just playing distance. It really is like you have to understand that you were zoning out areas when you play Sigma, you were not Reinhardt. So I'm actually thinking of doing a Sigma guide, maybe going into Season 10. People really liked the D.Va guide, and I might do a very similar one, which is basically just looking at like the tank matchups and what I do against each tank. If I'm doing that, what I find to be like a good matchup, bad matchup, etc. So stay tuned for that one, because that probably will happen. Why does D.Va counter Reaper? Well, that's a good question. I'm going to read the thread here. But like, actually, before I even read the thread, I'll kind of explain why D.Va can counter Reaper. It's just timing. D.Va has the ability to burst out enough damage onto Reaper that Reaper is forced to use Fade. The moment that Reaper uses Fade, D.Va can win that. And you gotta remember that a lot of the time they use their Fade, you basically can just sit there and save your DM. A lot of it's just timing your DM correctly, putting some of that like pop shot damage into him. And you, at the very worst, have the ability to disengage from the Reaper in comparison to a lot of tanks that can't. D.Va has a massive hitbox, and the crit point is really easy to hit. When I was playing Reaper, she lowers DM for 2 seconds, and I go blam, 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 and delete half her health. When I was experimenting with D.Va, I tried DM plus missiles on a Reaper at point-blank range to avoid the self-heal, but it barely did anything to him. But Wiki says total max damage from missiles is 198. More realistically, let's say it's going to be around 150, which is only half of Reaper's health and gives him plenty of time to Wraith out. Let me explain this to you this way. It's not about deleting the Reaper, right? Like if I'm trying to shut down a Reaper, I'm not trying to get the limb all the time. I'm just trying to make it so the Reaper gets no value. And I think a lot of Reaper players will tell you this, but if you can't do anything as Reaper, you're just running around in circles. You're just there kind of spectating a lot of the time. And that's what you do as D.Va, right? Think about it more as like you're shutting down their ability to do anything, so that way they're constantly fading out. And you said it. You're constantly getting them to Wraith out. Good. That's exactly how you need to do that. And if they stay close to you and you can get them after, great. If they're out of the team fight, that is already a successful tanking mission for you at that point, right? Don't worry so much about the limb on Reaper. Just worry about getting Reaper out of the team fight. Because any Reaper will tell you if they can't do anything and they have to always re-engage back in, it's so hard to find that value. Oh, wow. Perfect comment here. First one I read here. Shutting down / countering a hero doesn't always mean killing them. Don't focus on just killing him. Focus on pissing him off and completely disrupting what he wants to do. You know what? I could have said it better myself. I think that the overall point here is against why does D.Va counter Reaper, because you can prevent Reaper from making the rotational plays that Reaper wants to make. It's unreasonable to expect your tank to always know what's happening behind him. Well, yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I've talked about sometimes where, like, I almost try to teach the idea of sometimes you just need to do a really quick second turnaround. Whether that's looking where your Ana's LOS at. Like, I say your Ana's LOS, line of sight. Where's your Ana at? Where can I be in line of sight of my Ana to get healed? Where's my team? Is my team going at the same pace of me? So, is it unreasonable to expect your tank to always know what's happening behind him? I mean, your tank is not always going to know what's happening behind him unless the information's being fed to him. Don't make your tank turn around every 3 seconds mid-fight to know what's happening. Tank already has 4 jobs, all of which involve making space, creating cover, pressuring, and holding. Which, even if you do all that perfectly, your teammates will tell you you're not. Turning around is easy to do pre-push and post-push, but mid-push I need to be told when heals get cut off. I don't mean like your tank broke LOS, I mean as in you got peeled mid-engagement after your tank is already committed. So the idea of just saying, hey, we can't heal you, back up, back up. Listen for sound cues is severely overestimating how audible your damage grunts are to dive brawl tanks. It's also so often irrelevant. Hearing / knowing a soldier is poking at your supports isn't going to tell you your supports can't rotate in order to keep LOS while avoiding the peel. Side note, I would very much recommend if you don't have the option of hearing when your teammates get eliminated, put that on. It can be very helpful to get a quick glance at the kill feed after to see who it is. It's not perfect. It's not what you're looking for in this exact thread, but it can be very helpful, and it's something that once I turned it on, I saw a bit of an improvement on that one. In all fairness, it should be their job to call out things too. I'm over here soaking a bunch of damage, scrambling for cover, and my team is lollygagging around the back because a Genji dashed in and is winning a 1v4. Sounds like very specific situation. This one's a really good thread here, actually, called Why You Need to Off Angle. Now, I'm not going to go into like full details. I might kind of segue off this one, but this looks like a really informative thread in a sense. One thing I would say when it comes to why you need to off angle, a good way to summarize it is this. If one team is looking at you, right? So you're just looking at a team in front of you, and they just look at you, and that's all they have to do. This means that everybody in your team is all stacked together. How easy is it for them? Now, let's say that this is on Nabani, and I've seen in some ranks, players on first point Nabani will take that battle right in the middle of the street. What happens if somebody on your team goes top left? This is what you call an off angle. And when you take that off angle, right, you now have created the option of either A, the person on the off angle can just get a bunch of limbs because they're not going to look at you, or B, they look at you, which takes the pressure off the front line. Now imagine if you have someone top right in that same situation. So you have somebody left side, right side, and 3 in the middle. Now you've created 2 off angles, which could also become 3 off angles if they have to turn around. And that's why off angles become so important. You'll hear it in like scrim comms. You'll hear the concept of it. It basically takes pressure off your team. Create those off angles, and you'll see a good result. And obviously, this is a really good thread in here, talking about like the resources, denial of space, all of that, safety, etc. So definitely a thread worth checking out. But I wanted to kind of go a little bit into that quickly on like why you need to off angle. As Sigma, how do I handle a standoff with Rein? I'm having a hard time holding the front line as Sigma when a Rein is approaching. My barrier and kinetic grasp do not protect me against his hammer. I often feel like I have no choice but to fall back to keep the space. But I'm conceding a lot of ground for my team in the process. What would you advise me to do in such a standoff? What have you heard me say in my spectators? And if you're new and haven't seen my spectators, this is something that I talk about all the time. You are Sigma, not Reinhardt. You said you're worried about keeping some of the space that you have. The thing about Sigma is your space creation is your damage, is zoning out areas, right? Most good teams will back away all of Circuit Royale, all the way to that corner as Sigma. You spam, you back up. You spam, you back up. Rein will lose a lot of those battles from distance because they can't do anything. So as Sigma, stop worrying about that standoff with the Rein. Just it's okay if you give up a little bit of space. That is how you play Sigma. Your space creation is your damage, and then you use your other resources to be able to like help your shield out or eat some damage, etc. But if you find that you're just constantly going up against a Reinhardt swinging on you, it's more than likely going to be your positioning and like how too close you're playing to Rein than it is anything else. How to deal with Sombra and Tracer as tank? Well, you just don't. You just wave at them, you say hello, and you ping them aggressively. I wish I was kidding. Maybe I am. Hey guys, I'm new to the tank role. I peaked Diamond 3 as DPS and support, but I'm Gold 5 as tank right now. Last night I kept facing against Tracer and Sombra combos, and my team was getting destroyed behind me. What tank should I play to help support my team against this? What strategies can I provide my team to help them counter? If you're playing like a Queen comp, by the way, and this is like, you're kind of taught, get their cooldowns out. The number one thing you can do against a Sombra Tracer is force their cooldowns out. And this kind of comes down to like this battle, and I learned a little bit actually during scrims, is like, in these situations where a Sombra Tracer are just on you or on your backline the whole time, the best thing you can do is help get cooldowns out. If they're specifically on your backline, even if you try to push into their backline, they're probably going to get rolled because they're going to have a little bit more help there if your team's not running Sombra Tracer. So, any of these tanks, the best thing you can do is just try to force out cooldowns in Sombra and Tracer. And I know it doesn't sound the most exciting, and a lot of the time you're not going to get the elim, but that's probably the best thing that you can do. How to beat Zarya in the metal ranks. I've heard Zarya is average at the highest elo, but I feel like she's dominating the metal ranks. From my understanding, there's 2 ways to fight against a Zarya. Either completely ignore her, full dive, and kill all her teammates before taking on Zarya, or fully commit to the Zarya and use all your resources to blow her up and then deal with the rest without cooldowns. There's a lack of team coordination in the metal ranks, so getting the team to commit to one of these has been challenging the last few weeks with her buff. This may not be the best answer for you, especially when you're asking like in general on the heroes that you're playing here. You gotta count bubbles. I'm telling you right now, if you count bubbles and you get really good at this, your ability to follow up and pressure Zarya even by yourself is gonna be a lot. Players concentrate so much on not shooting Zarya bubble that's how Zarya gets so much space a lot of the time. Is players give Zarya like this kind of like this double whammy of a strategy where if you don't shoot the Zarya bubbles, right, the Zarya takes space and kind of runs at your team, and you start to back up. If you shoot the bubbles, the Zarya takes the space and goes from there. So a lot of what you need to do is actually track the bubbles as much as you can, whether the Zarya has 0 charge or 100 charge. Obviously, you don't want to give them 100 energy, but if they have no bubbles, you can easily shred a Zarya at 100 energy. What makes Dorado and Numbani bad maps? With the recent developer update video, Aaron Keller announced that they are reworking some of the old maps in future seasons, those maps being Coliseo, Havana, Circuit Real, Dorado, and Numbani. I kind of understand why Coliseo, Havana, and Circuit Real are being reworked, probably because of their way too long sight lines and maybe lack of flank routes, which could make sense, but I have no idea why Dorado and Numbani are considered bad, to the point to get in a rework, multiple streamers say they despise Dorado, but they never explain on why. First of all, I don't necessarily think that they're bad maps, per se. It's more along the lines of, like, how you have to achieve high grounds in these maps is really difficult. I'm a little bit biased. I actually like Numbani, but that's because it's the only map throughout Overwatch 1 all the way into Overwatch 2 where D.Va has been a viable pick. Whether it was in a Goats meta, whether it was in a double shield meta, whether it was in a Zarya meta, D.Va could always be a hero on that map, which is why. But that's a bit biased, right? To summarize Dorado and Numbani first point, high ground is dominant, and, like, the maps don't quite... It isn't easy high ground to obtain. Another thing that actually Aaron Keller had mentioned, I can't remember if it was in an interview or if it was with the Flats interview, mentioned that on Numbani, it's one of the furthest away first spawns. So it actually takes a long time to get back to first point. They're actually looking to change that. So the point is these maps do need some shifts, but I'm also glad they are. So what do you think about these maps in general? What makes these maps difficult for you? Because my experience in Top 100 can be a little bit different. Anyway, thank you a ton for watching this. I know it's a little bit different than what we do, and let me know what you think in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to the YouTube. We have 3 channels. If you haven't subbed to all of them. We also record a lot of our stuff on stream. This one we actually didn't, but make sure to stop by the stream if you haven't. We have a lot of fun there. Thank you for all the love, and let me know if you want to see more of these. And we're also looking for, a bunch of stuff in my Discord, whether it comes to TikToks, Reddit posts, YouTube comments, etc. So make sure to stop by there if you haven't. And with that being said, hope you all have an amazing day/night.